welcome to TUC0's Talks. TUC0's Talks is a leadership podcast where we talk to military leaders and to athletic coaches to try to figure out how do we take care of people and how do we learn and fail forward. Well, I do want to thank Moray Classical Schools for partnering with us. Moray Classical Schools is a private Christian classical school specifically tailored for military kids. If you do not know about Moray Classical Schools, I highly recommend you go to morayclassical.org and learn more about them. Well, today we're talking with Coach Whitney Bailey. Whitney is also on the board of Moray Classical Schools. She is a very well-respected and outstanding leader. She has been a collegiate assistant athletic director, a high school athletic director, and she is now starting an FCA club volleyball team. Today, we're going to talk about culture. We're going to talk about how to get the right people on the bus and how to get them on the right seats. She is one that is passionate about investing in athletes, investing in kids. It is incredible to hear her talk about what the next generation brings and how excited she is for that. Well, make sure that you like and subscribe and get ready to check in with TUC0's Talks. Hello and welcome back to TUC0's Talks. It is another day of interviews and I'm excited to be here. So I have Whitney Bailey here, and say hello, Whitney.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing well. Well, I am excited to have you on the show, not only so you can talk through your leadership experiences, but just to get to know you a little bit more. Whitney is on the board for Moray Classical Schools, and so it's always good to be with you and to be able to talk with you, and we will get this going. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself so everybody gets to know you?
My name is Whitney Bailey, and I have a background in higher ed and K-12 athletics, and started out coaching in high school and played college volleyball when my coaches had seen me coaching at a state final with one of my former head coaches and asked me to come back and work with him. And through that, I ended up working in the athletic department. And after a few years of being in that role, a new athletic director came in, a female athletic director, and noticed some qualities in me and really invested time and energy in helping me develop those and promoted me up to the point where I left there as the assistant athletic director for internal operations, senior women's administrator, and deputy timeline coordinator for the university, and then went from there into K-12. And today I am a homeschool mom. So wild.
That's a change.
Yeah, but it's a big shift.
Homeschool mom, you've got to be able to take everything from different directions and be able to knock it out.
Yep.
So 3 kids, all different ages, all different grades, homeschooling. I mean, that's a full-time job right there.
It is the hardest thing I've ever done. Having all the athletes and the coaches, they listen. To an extent, right? The kids don't listen.
Facts. Yes, so. I am well aware of that one.
Mm-hmm.
I was that. Like my mom and my dad. So my dad was prior military and my mom was a teacher, and they would just sit down and try to get me to study and to do that, and it just didn't listen. It just didn't stick. So homeschooling would have definitely not worked at my house. But
it's a challenge.
That's great.
Not for the faint of heart.
No.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question. And so the podcast is all about leadership. It's all about taking care of your people and just really for that young first leader who's just trying to figure out what to do. Where do I start? How does it go?
Yeah.
When you were coming up, I'm sure you had a ton of great leaders that were investing in you, and we've talked about that. But what I'll ask is, think of that one or two really great leaders, and then what was it that made them great, in your mind?
Yeah. I think, leadership, I have to go back to when I was a kid, right? I mean, my dad, um, even to this day, my dad, and it started with his dad, I mean, would feed us, an apple a day, right? A
Mhm.
quote, an inspirational quote. They were really big on goal planning in our family and
Yes.
kind of helped us envision and picture what we wanted our lives to look like in 10 to 15 years. And
Mhm.
then really, really kind of laid the foundation of working hard, which is how I ended up playing collegiate volleyball. Um, but then all the way through, I always had amazing coaches that kind of trusted me, right? It's trusting with leadership,
Mhm.
um, that trusted me in that role. And then when I moved into an actual leadership role in the athletic department, um, it was more so the characteristic and the thing that I think my boss did when she came in was she really focused on building the culture, but building it as a team. And so there was so much buy-in, right? There was so much buy-in from us as as ADs. There was so much buy-in from our coaching staff, and then that became very contagious, right? So then everyone has that huge buy-in, and when I say that we created together, we sat down within the first couple weeks of her being there, and we did the whole staff retreat in a room, brainstorming where we wanted this to go and how we were going to go ahead and make a big impact. And
Yeah.
so there was full buy-in from everybody.
So, all right. So we've used two big words that
Mm,
young leaders are going to hear, but probably don't have a great concept. Those words are culture and
mm,
buy-in. So why don't we back up and say, all right, developing a culture. What is that? What does that mean?
sure. I think it's more so identifying who you are as
Mhm.
for us as a department, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard. You're either directing where you're going as a department, or you're kind of going with the flow. And
Mm.
that's going to take you potentially in opposite directions, right? And so you have to be very intentional and define who you are so that you can really understand the places that you want to go. Because if we can identify the goal, right? If we can identify what we want to look like and what kind of impact we want to have, then we can really kind of establish how to create that culture within our department. And
Gosh.
and it was really incredible to see the shift, and it was quick. We always say in athletics it takes 3 years, right? It takes three
Mhm.
years to shift a culture, or to change or to see any type of product, because you go through that recruiting process. You have to get the right people on the bus.
Yep.
That was a big thing for us, was figuring out who we are and then getting the right people on the bus. And sometimes we had to love people out the door, and that was not easy, but it really shifted in our time there.
You know, I love the way you're talking through those things. And I always talk about guardrails. Like when I'm talking culture, I have to put the guardrails on,
Hmm.
because if I say we are this, yet I do something different, then
Yep.
we're never going to get there. And if
No.
I don't put out the guardrails when people go outside that, I don't correct them
Hmm.
and lead them back and not ask my subordinate to correct them. Like
Hmm.
I need to correct them because they
Right.
need to see it's coming from me as the leader. We stay within here, and then eventually 3 years later we'll end up really pretty close to where we're trying to go.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, that's the hope, right? That we
yeah.
end up where we've kind of painted this picture. And, it takes time to see that. And
Mm.
so, in a society where we're so used to immediate results, that can be hard to really get people to buy in. And so you have to be very proactive in kind of painting that picture. You have to be very aggressive sometimes in, reminding, right? It's the consistent reminders so that it stays at the forefront of everyone's minds.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Passionately aggressive toward your
mhm.
goals.
Yes.
And I love that. Okay. So that's culture. I think you nailed it. I think we all have that concept. All right. So what was the other thing that we were talking about? Culture, and you said
The
another
buy-in.
keyword, buy-in. Oh, yes. All right.
Yeah.
So I think buy-in's easy. Everyone is going to do what you say. How do you get the buy-in?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with getting the right people on the bus first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who was it? John Gordon, who wrote the Energy Bus. I think that's a great, easy
Yes.
read. I mean, you can read it in a day, but I think that he speaks to, that kind of getting the right people in the right seats. And when you have people who are on the right bus, in the right seats, and they have this passionate understanding and mission, right? They're mission minded, that
Yes.
you guys are then all kind of going towards this common goal. That becomes infectious. And really it's you're not just managing down, you're also managing up, right? Because you
Oh,
have
yeah.
these different layers as it goes. And so to get true buy-in, it has to be something that is infectious and that people can really get behind. And it has a lot to do with, I mean, you can't just sit here and say, I mean, you can say, we want to hit 1 million in sales, right? In the
Right.
next month. Um, but there has to be something behind that, right? I mean, for us, it was we want to create Christian game changers, right? To impact this world
Hmm.
for Christ on and off the field. And so our thing everywhere we go, we're creating Christian game changers. That was a big thing for us. And so, that one, when we got the right people on the bus in the right seats, it just kind of became something where this was everyone's mission together. And it was really cool to see and be a part of that, because it kind of just, went from being a department who and the previous leader was wonderful, right? But he didn't have the, I think, impact, because he didn't have that culture that was created that was necessary to kind of move things forward. And so
Yeah.
once you saw all of that start to move, it moved quickly, right? And in just a few years, we had joined the conference that we had been trying to get, to become a part of for years.
Right.
We saw wins. We hadn't seen wins at, bigger levels, So you
That's
start,
always good.
I mean, yeah, let's talk about the things that have immediate results. Well, we start winning. You start getting in the right recruits, because
Yeah.
you've got to have your students, they speak volumes about who you are, right? They're your brand. So,
Yes.
making sure that you're recruiting. And so when you clearly define what that is, you start to see it trickle down, from the very top to, the student body. And, hearing the kids say, hey, I'm a Christian game changer. This is what this means to me. I mean, that's cool.
Mhm.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
All right. Great. So we've got the buy-in. We figure out how to do that. I just love what you said. And I guess it's from the Energy book. So I'm Jim Collins. Love what he does. Get the right people on the bus
Mhm.
type of deal. But I have not heard the get the right people in the seats. And
Mm.
we could go on an entire series of podcasts of how to do that. And the seat's going to change, right?
Mhm.
You're not going to sit in the same dang seat every single time
Yep.
because you grow as a person, you grow as a leader, therefore you must move up and
Mhm.
you must start developing others and putting your arms around them and leading them up to the upper part of the bus, or however you want to say it.
Mhm.
But man, that really starts to get you to think, all right, let me see where I am now. And then I love where are we going to be in 15 years? I mean, that's
Mm.
not taught now because we're instantaneous. I want to know where I am
Mhm.
tomorrow and I
Right.
want to be promoted in next month. And, I want the raise then. And 15 years, you stop talking about promotions. You stop
Mhm.
talking about raises. You start talking about who do I want to become?
Right.
Um, and that's sensational. That's sensational.
Yeah.
So kudos to your dad for that. I'm going to actually steal that and I'm writing that one down.
Yeah, he's
So it's
pretty
good.
awesome.
All right. So that's a little bit about leadership, and I wanted to get into that because that's important. But I want to switch things now. You are a full-time homeschool mom, and you're also on the board of a school starting up, which is an enormous task. You are doing a million things, but one of those things is you said, you know what? I've got extra time. I'm going to start an FCA volleyball
Yeah.
club team, which in itself is not easy.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I'm assuming there's one or two other volleyball clubs out there,
Hmm.
as there are all over the nation. So let me ask you really first, talk to me before you talk to me about the team.
Hmm.
Why are you doing this? What's the why behind doing this?
Yeah. I mean, really, that's the reason we're doing it. It's the why. I think that, we're constantly giving feedback to our athletes on performance. And there's almost this kind of identity crisis, right? We're seeing that in our society, but there's this identity crisis that happens. I went through it, after I was done playing my sport, you know, now what, right?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
more I spoke to other student athletes I coached over the years that, I mean, had been at the, Division I Final Four, they went through the same identity crisis. Some of them even went and played pro, and they sat there for a few years after going, now what? This has been
Mm-hmm.
who I am. And so when I started helping, I volunteered at the YMCA and started the rec program, and then also at our local high school. And I started having conversations with these kids. You're sitting here going, you're more than what you do. It was like for them to hear that from a coach. Hey, yeah, you messed up, but that's okay. It doesn't define you. Um, I think that we've fallen into this hyper competitivism in
Yeah.
our athletic world, and we are purely defining these kids at a younger and younger age because there's so much competition now. And so they're making a decision about who they are based on their performance.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes right back to I can't really, as I was looking at volleyball and how I can make an impact, it's so hard for me to talk and have this conversation about who you are without having a conversation about whose you are, right? Because
Yep.
I can't separate that.
Right.
And
You can't.
so I went back and I approached FCA and said, okay, it's been 2 years since we've had a conversation about me being involved. I shut you down the first time. I was wrong. We need this. Our girls need this, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so I was looking at what FCA offered, and everything was offered. It was mainly geared towards our young men, and our young women were
Mm.
getting missed. And I think that it is so important that we, especially for our young female athletes, and I mean, I have two daughters. Girls make a decision about who they are and their identity starting at 8, right? I have an 8-year-old in
Gosh.
a week. And so it really hit me down to my core when I realized, okay, if my kids are going to be participating in this, I want to make sure that we're meeting these kids where they're at. I want to make sure that we are feeding them truth and speaking life into these kids.
Mm.
The parents aren't going to church on Sunday because they're in a gym. So let's go there. Let's meet them there. Let's meet them where they are at.
Yes.
It's very hard. You can only fight the culture of what's going on in athletics for so long. And sometimes, if we need to bring it to them, let's bring it to them. And
Yep.
so it's really cool to see the impact. Even just changing the feedback, right, with some of these high school girls and seeing, the response kind of like, wait, you're not going to be punished. I'm not in trouble for messing that up. No, I believe in
Right.
you. Right. So I think we hold a lot of power as coaches, as administrators, as teachers. And, that is something that we've been given an opportunity to speak life or death, right, into these kids' lives. And so that's a big responsibility.
It is. And I mean, that's huge. And, women's sports is really under attack. Title IX has made incredibly horrible steps backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And so the important part of it is, and I think we miss this. We miss the fact that it's not about the winning and losing. It's
Right.
not about anything to do with that. It's who and in whom they are, so that it can empower them to
Right.
live a life worthy. I'm all about the character and the virtues and it being a leadership laboratory. And this
Mm-hmm.
is where we teach you virtues in the classroom or at home. And then we
Right.
allow you to participate in it. And we're going to test you on it at every
Mm-hmm.
single turn. And
Yeah.
so the why of what you're doing is enormous, and I love it. I think it's a fantastic way to go about it. And so, okay, so what are you doing? Like, what
Yeah.
is this team? Where is it? Who are you working with? All that.
Yeah. So FCA Sports is a new branch of Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And so there's not many clubs around the country that are popping up quite yet. So it's still kind of this new thing. I'm in the process of, I just got back from Kansas City. It was awesome. Got to see what FCA as a whole is doing up there. And I'm so fired up because you hear so much of the negative of what has happened this
Mm-hmm.
generation. And there's so much good that is
Yes.
happening in this generation as well. And these kids, like, they are looking for truth. And so, anyway, all that to say, we are located in sunny South Florida, and we're fortunate. There's actually an FCA volleyball club that launched about 2 hours north of us. So we have a little bit of an idea of a model to kind of go
Nice.
off of. And we are starting in fall of 2024. We'll be holding tryouts in the summertime, which is really exciting just to see who comes out. It's
Mm-hmm.
funny because as I've kind of just very quietly, I was asked to coach at a couple different clubs this last year, and I said no because we're going to be looking at doing FCA volleyball. And the response already, if you guys start that, we're coming. So, I mean, just the reputation of FCA alone, I mean,
Yes.
believers and non-believers, they see the benefit of what we're teaching, these kids and the character that we're teaching and the difference of how we're coaching. You want to coach mind, body, spirit. You can't
Yes.
separate those. I'm a huge believer in that. And
Yep.
so it's important to coach up and to train up the whole child. And yeah, I think that it'll be exciting to see, what happens and how God uses it here, how we just have an opportunity to impact our community, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
Right. Right. Building people and impacting the community is such a large part. Now, I grew up playing football. That
Mm.
was my thing, but I've
Mhm.
quickly become a lax guy. So my oldest son, he was really good. He was really good. He would go up to the Northeast and play in the summer up there, and he loved it. Well, the two younger boys wanted to be my older son, so
Mm.
they joined in, and they've been playing. They're in 8th grade. I think they've been playing for 9, maybe 10 years now.
Oh, wow.
And so they grew up with a lacrosse stick in their hands. And
Ah.
one of the things was FCA lacrosse, which is
Mhm.
like really, really good lacrosse.
Mhm.
Um, and so what you see is people want to be a part of, one, something really good, and then
Mhm.
two, something that's more than just lacrosse or more
Mhm.
than just volleyball. It's about defining who you are and having that general. When I walk into an FCA sport, whatever it is, I
Mhm.
know that I'm going to want to be super competitive.
Mhm.
I'm going to want to get after it. My coaches are going to be excited. Coaches are going to go. But ultimately, they're going to love me whether I'm good or not. And they're
Mhm.
going to love me enough to help me grow in whatever it is and who I am. And
Mhm.
so, man, I'm so excited that you're doing this. I think it's going to be fantastic. Well, have you all set up dates on and locations of where the tryouts are going to be, or where you're going to practice, or anything like that?
Uh, yeah, that's our biggest challenge right now is finding gym space because there's not a lot
Mm,
of it. And we face some obstacles here that I honestly, when I was researching all of this, I knew it was going to be a challenge. But right now I've got some space at our local YMCA. Thankfully, some of my community hours have paid off there. And we have some local churches that have said, hey, we can come alongside here and help you out when we have the time and space. So I'm planning on us growing very organically. We'll hold
okay.
tryouts at the end of July, but I think I think it's so important that as we grow, we want to make sure that we're getting the right people once again in the right seats,
Mm,
because I think that coach to student impact is so important. And my job will be to coach the coaches. And so if we grow too quickly, then sometimes that can be a very negative thing because you lose, the culture that you're trying to build. And so, from studying some other clubs that have popped up, that's kind of been their biggest issue because they grew so fast, and then they kind of lost that culture of what they were trying to build in the first place. And so, we're trying to be very mindful as we're going forward. And fortunately for us, there are some clubs that are established in our area, but there's not a ton. I mean, these kids are driving. I mean, this is what's so wild to me is these kids are driving, some of them over an hour and a half to go down to where they think that they will have the best opportunity to grow to be a collegiate athlete.
Mm.
And, my messaging is 6 to 7%, I think it might be up to 7% now, of student athletes in the US actually go on and play collegiate athletics. And that's between
Yeah.
D1, 2, 3, and AIA. And
Yeah.
so, the reality is, we're investing all of our time, our money, right, into athletics. Let's look at what the purpose of athletics does. It mirrors life, right? It creates these little micro challenges that you have to learn how to walk through a trial and how to respond. There's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser.
Yeah.
And how do we handle our wins, but more importantly, how do we handle our losses? And I think that that's what the purpose of athletics is. And if we can teach these kids how to walk through these trials and how to press on and build some
Mm.
resilience and some grit, then we're setting them up for a lot more success as they go and they face some of these harder things that life is going to throw at them later on. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I love press on. That just always resonated with me
mm,
through all the trials. And so I think when I went to um, the SEC FCA summer camp, that
hmm
was our team slogan was press on. So
okay.
anyway, so I tell you, it's been so good to have you on the podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. Let me ask, if someone's listening to this and they're like, you know what, I'm all in on helping the female leadership and FCA volleyball, and you specifically, if they wanted to reach out and help, how would they do that?
Reach out to your local huddle leader. Almost
There you go.
every campus has an FCA huddle going on, and FCA has done a great job at getting people in the field of their local high schools, local middle schools, and you probably have one, at your local school. And then you have to go through a process to volunteer, but I mean, get involved. I didn't realize until I started going through this process that all the people working in FCA, they go and they raise their own support.
Oh
And
wow.
so oh yeah, it's crazy. And I love the biblical model that they're doing because they really are, they're the hands and feet, and they are asking people to partner and come alongside. And so, maybe you can't help by supporting your FCA, your local FCA rep or huddle leader or whomever it may be, but you can go and you can volunteer and serve. And, um, they're always looking for great people to be involved. And that's what we're called to do. I mean, we're all part of the Great Commission, as
Yeah.
believers. I think that that's where I didn't understand that until the last year of, I have this huge hurdle with being in ministry, but as a believer, I'm part of the Great Commission.
Yeah.
And so I'm called,
Yeah.
regardless of what I'm calling myself, I'm called. And
Yes.
so are we all. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. I love this part of it. We're doing a part of this on mental health and
Mm,
being able to take care of yourself. And I am a firm believer. If you want to take care of yourself, focus on others. Like,
absolutely.
there's nothing better than when I walk away from a lacrosse practice where other people have just grown, they're excited, and I'm like,
Hmm.
I got way more out of this than other people. So
Yeah.
selfishly love to coach.
Oh, love that. Yes, it's so true. And I mean, these kids are awesome. Just get
Yeah.
involved. So
All right. Thanks, Whitney. Appreciate your time. Everybody else, hope you enjoy the podcast. Leave some comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And we will see you next week. This is TUC0's Wright. Check it off.